Can you describe yourself using just 3 words to encapsulate all of who you are? The trick is those 3 words cannot have anything to do with music or your profession or your hobbies or your passions. Okay? So if you can't use music and you can't use hobbies, passions, and your employment to describe yourself, can you come up with 3 adjectives that tell us who you are? What a challenge, eh? Hello, rock stars, Matt Vanderbo here, and in today's video, I'm going to come at you with a bit of a controversial opinion that I'm assuming will probably rankle some tail feathers here and there. But despite how much it may get under your skin, I do want you to give this message a shot and just digest it. After you hear what I have to say, you can either say to yourself,
"Oh, Vanderbo's just full of crap,"
or "That was the stupidest thing I've ever heard," or "I disagree entirely," or you might say,
I've never thought about it quite like that.
So stick with me for a few minutes and I am going to go over why you are more than your music and music does not define who you are as a person. So I want to go back in time about, 14 or 15 years ago. I was dating a girl and the relationship was getting fairly serious. But as it was getting more serious, it was also beginning to have some problems. And it's been long enough now that I do not remember what these problems were. I do know the lady in question is she's super, super sweet. And I still talk to her to this day. And she's just a sweetheart. But the relationship was it was going in this direction, but then there were cracks and it was kind of at this crossroads. And we decided that we would get some relationship counseling just to see if we could come out as a stronger couple. In one of the first sessions, the counselor, who was an older guy, he was probably in his early 70s, and he was a musician. Okay, he's a bass guitarist, and he'd played bass guitar his whole life and sings, and he would perform locally quite a bit. I didn't know this about him at the time. So in our first session, or one of our first sessions, he asked us to describe ourselves using 3 adjectives. And so he goes, "Matt, why don't you go first?" And so I got this one easy. Musician, first word out of my mouth, and he stops me right there. He's like, nope. I said, what do you mean no? He goes, "You cannot use your profession or your passions or your hobbies to define yourself." And I was like, "You son of a bitch, of course I can." And it really rankled me. And I was like, what does this guy know? He's obviously not a musician, because if he was, he would understand that being a musician is the core crux of your entire personality and your life. So I thought, this guy's just off his rocker. Turns out, like I said, he was a musician. So this really got under my skin. I was like, oh, yeah. And I really struggled with coming up with 3 other words. And I was like, are you sure I can't say music? Because that's pretty much my thing. And he said, no. And the reason is people should not be defining themselves by the work they do or the passions they have or the hobbies that they pursue. These are just things that you do for enjoyment or money, but it has nothing to do with the inner character of who you are as a person. Once he said it like that, I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. I mean, it still took a while to sink in. I was resistant to this for a little while, but looking back in hindsight, this is probably one of the most pivotal conversations that I've ever had with someone on what it means to be a human being with a good personality and not just some flashy pursuit that we are undertaking. And so now, all these years later, if I were to describe myself using 3 words, I would probably say optimistic, motivational, and joyful or lively. I don't know. And I think those words really kind of get at who I am as a person and what I try to get across to other people. I try to motivate. I try to inspire. And I do that by just being a joyful, lively person. And I'm always looking at things from a glass half full perspective. I am optimistic to a fault. And that's been one of the guiding principles of my whole life. For better or for worse, I always see things like,
I think things will turn around.
no matter how hard the situation I'm in currently might be. So those are 3 words that I would use to describe myself now. And notice how music was not in that list at all. Because after all these years, I've realized the poignancy and the validity of what this old gentleman told me. And as musicians, we are not music. We are people with our own quirks, our own tics, our own likes, our own dislikes, our own lovable qualities, our own abrasive qualities. We have all these things in us as people that are like existing here in the head and here in the heart, but that has nothing to do with the music that comes out of your fingertips. So I want you guys to do this same exercise and try to come up with 3 words that describe you. And if you're feeling so bold, you can write those in the comments, or you can write something like,
well, I am a musician, that's all I am, and so blah, blah, blah.
so take that and shove it. But if you can survive this lesson and come up with 3 things that describe you, none of them being about music or your other passions, whatever they may be, then you are probably on the right track to getting a handle on who you are really as a person. So the thing that this gentleman told me back 14 or so years ago was that people should not be conflating their job and profession with who they are as people, because they are not at all the same thing. So when somebody is good at a job or profession, especially with people that are doing jobs that put them in some type of spotlight, for example, musicians, athletes, movie stars. So you take those types of groups of people, and what you've got is you've got the general public that knows nothing about that person other than their work. And so for the general public, if they chose to describe a person like, I don't know, Chris Pratt, movie star, the general public would probably say, oh, he's a great actor. And that's all they know about him. And we don't really know who Chris Pratt is unless you see interviews where he's just kind of talking, being himself, because all we really see of actors and actresses is the persona of the character that they are portraying on screen. We know nothing about these people. Same thing with athletes. We cheer on our favorite athletes, but we don't know who these people are. You all remember Michael Vick and the scandal he went through with his dogfighting ring? This is an athlete that we celebrated as a nation because he was such a gifted and talented quarterback. But behind closed doors, his personality was one that thought it was okay to be harboring disgusting, violent dogfighting rings for money. And that was something in the core of his personality. It had nothing to do with football. Football was just something he was good at, okay, that gave him a lot of fame and fortune. If we want to look at comparative examples to music, I mean, goodness, you just look around all the train wrecks there are in the music industry, and you can tell that, hey, even though these people may be ultra talented at what they do, we really don't have a handle on who they are as people. And that's really the lesson here, is to disassociate yourself from the music, because that's just something you do for fun. That is a creative outlet. Maybe it's a money-making outlet for you. Maybe it's your full-time job. But nonetheless, I mean, when I sold advertising for a local newspaper, that was not part of my identity. I didn't brag about that to friends. Oh, I'm a newspaper advertising salesman. Look at me. In the same way that you probably wouldn't be bragging if you, I don't know, flip burgers at Wendy's. Like, just because you do something for money doesn't mean that that defines you and who you are as a person. And I guess the moral of the story is one that will spill into the next video that I'm going to make, which is going to be all about your personality and the enjoyment people find in your company and working with you. It's you as a person that is going to be your most important asset as a musician. Skill level, although extremely important, at some point your skill level starts to take a backseat to other things, like whether you're a nice guy. And so if your 3 adjectives that you use to describe yourself, or you think your friends or family would use to describe you, if any of those contain the words or phrases hard-headed, stubborn, a stick in the mud, a real curmudgeon, or just being a general asshole? Well, I've got news for you. Those personality traits are going to be so toxic to any music library that no amount of skill that you bring to the table is going to overcome those. But that's what we're going to get into in the next video. If I can wrap this one up into a tidy little bow here, it is that I want you all to know that you are more than a musician. Music is just something you do, whereas what you have in here and up here and the light that you bring to the world, that has nothing to do with music and everything to do with who you are as a person. It's like, nobody ever looked at a guy like Jeffrey Dahmer or the Son of Sam and said, well, the first word that springs to mind with them is they were a good gardener. No, what comes to mind, these are evil, murderous, disgusting, violent people. Okay, that's their personality. The stuff they put on show to their neighbors to fly under the radar, that was just a facade. And so I'm not telling you that music is a facade in your life. I'm just telling you that does not make you who you are. And this is why after all these years, when I run into people who don't really know what I do, and maybe I see them at music conferences and, everyone's got their version of the elevator speech.
Hi, I'm so-and-so, and I write music for blah, 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 and I do hip-hop, and I do pop and blah.
When I introduce myself, I just say, hey, I'm Matt. And that's it. And if someone says, well, what do you do? I say, I try to be a good father to my 10-year-old daughter. That's it. That's what makes me me. And if pressed to go a little bit farther, or if that is met by like a very questioning look, I say, I really just want to be a good role model for my daughter and her friends and all the people I work with and the people that I try to help. I just want to be a good role model and a good example. That's really it. Well, but what is it you do? I just told you what I do. And then eventually they can't take it anymore. Well, do you actually write? Oh, yeah, I write music. Yeah, whatever. But that's not the important part, because the music for me is just something that through a series of rather lucky breaks and not as a result of any talent I may have, I've just managed to get to the level that I am. And that's something that it probably pertains more to the very next video, which I'm going to do. So hang tight for that one. And I'll just wrap this video up with a quick joke. Since it's football season and my dear Boise State Broncos are already not doing so great. Here's a fun football joke. What did the football coach say to the broken vending machine? Give me my quarterback. Hey, I'll catch you rock stars on the next video. Toodles!